Hey, seniors, good Friday to you. It is Friday, the 15th of October. I hope that you guys had a great short week. I know we're just kind of getting rolling back into it. Next week is a long week. We get into the research project next week, but we just want to kind of wrap up some structure pieces here right now. Let's take a look at what we are doing today. When you go to Google Classroom and you pull up, when you pull up the form, you get a form that looks like this. Across the front is a bunch of serial killers. Yeah, kind of some scary guys there, right? Let's take a look at the form here. It's pretty straightforward. First name, last name, which block you're in. The first 6 questions are definitions, matching definitions. Very straightforward, kind of a review from yesterday. It gives you the definition. You pick which one of these it is, right? Again, we talk about the different structures. What are they? The definition, match them up. Pretty straightforward. It's kind of a review. Starting with number 7, we give you some short little snippets of text, and then we ask you which structure is being used in this excerpt. Now, we did try to use some short pieces of text so that there wouldn't be a lot of question, like debate, like is it this or this. I know in larger works, a lot more creative works, you could have multiple structures. That is not a problem. But for the readings that we have here, especially in this assignment, they are short, and we kept it to 1 structure per. So as you read this, you pick which structure it is. Again, very straightforward. Get you through number 10. Numbers 1 through 10, you get a practice grade on, because again, this is kind of a review and kind of rehash. And then we get to the daily learning check part. And this is where we are going to analyze structure and its effectiveness. Okay. When we look at this question here, this is a constructed response. It is not a TPAC. Although we are going to use the TPAC model to write the constructed response, I really want you to get into the habit of saying this is a constructed response. It's not a TPAC. There is no such thing as a TPAC. The TPAC model helps us create that constructed response, right? And why do we use that model? Again, we've talked about this before, but this just ensures that your answer is complete. It's well-rounded. Not only do you give an answer, but you give proof or illustrations, and then you analyze it and you show us why that answer is a valid answer. That also gives a lot of latitude because sometimes you can pick an answer that maybe someone else wouldn't, but when you explain it, okay, now we see it, right? And so it does serve a couple purposes. As we look at this question today, your teacher has assigned an informative paper about serial killers, of course, and famous killers in the United States. The popularity of documentary series and investigative podcasts have cast a new light on these criminals, looking at who they are, why they do it, how they are caught, and how they might have influenced later generations of killers. Which of the structures that we've talked about would be the best to use to present your information? Okay, so first off, you are not writing about serial killers, okay? I want to make sure you are not writing about a serial killer. That's not what this assignment is. This assignment gives you this kind of situation. If you had to write this, which structure would be the best to use, okay? And again, this is a constructed response. We're using the TPAC model. And you look here at your 5 different structures. Again, we've talked about how there are more than 5 structures, but these are the more common ones. Chronological, how things occur in time. Sequence, how they are ordered. Cause and effect, this leads to this. Or I might like it one side and ask you to discover and analyze the other. This is what happened, could be the effect. Or, hey, I'm seeing this that's going on. How did we get here? We're looking for the causes. We also have problem solution. Here's a problem, here's a solution. Will it match up? Will it make a difference? And then compare and contrast. Here's 2 things. How are they similar and how are they different? The thing about this question here is that you've got a lot of latitude because the first question is, what about serial killers would you be writing? Would you be writing about different names, how they've generated over time, maybe why they do it? There's a lot of different questions, a lot of different directions you can go here. And once you think of that, then you're going to pick the structure that works best for you. Okay? Don't pick the structure first, because then you have to figure out how you would write it to be in that structure. So pick this is what I would write about, which structure would be the best. So there is no one clear right or wrong answer on this, but you are going to have to explain it, okay? Again, when we think of the TPACK model, we're going to use that topic sentence. Here's part of the question, right? If I had to write a paper about serial killers, the best structure to use would be blank, okay? The example, this is where you start to talk about what you would be writing about and how that structure would be evident. That's that paraphrasing where you kind of reword it, you restate it, you show us you understand it. And then the analysis. Why is that the best? You started with the statement, this is the best structure. Now prove it. Now explain it. Now show us how you got to that answer. That's the analysis part. And then the conclusion is you kind of put your spin on it, okay? Again, there's no right or wrong answer here as long as you can explain it and it does make sense. Okay, you can't say I'll write a chronological because I want to see what made these people tick. Those wouldn't necessarily go together, right? So make sure that the structure and the topic or the subtopic, if you will, match up. But that's how you're going to write it. Now, I know that a lot of times we have kind of been thinking about how do I know that I've got a good constructive response? And so we also have this set of examples here for you that are kind of quick writes, but they're kind of scored. And just to give you an idea of how to approach your answer to get the score that you really want. So let's take a look at this. Let's assume that your teacher has asked you to write about cheese dip, of course. And then what would be the best structure to use and why? And again, you would have to start to think of, well, what about cheese dip? About the history of cheese dip, am I looking at which structure would be the best to use there? Let's take a look at some examples here. Example number one, there have been many that have claimed to be the first cheese dip. I think that whoever was the first can claim it and brag all they want. I would need to do the research and find out who was first. This answer would only score you a 6. It doesn't answer the question at all. The question is which would be the best structure to use. It doesn't even say a structure in here, right? It doesn't have anything about that. This answer could be 200 sentences long. Okay, that'd be a little expensive. It could be 20 sentences long. It doesn't answer the question. Therefore, it can never get anything better than the 6. Example number 2, if I had to write a paper about the history of cheese dip, I think I would use chronological structure. This is about the history of cheese dip, so it makes sense to start with the earliest and work to the present day. Obviously, there's a spelling error in there. This is the wrong sense, okay? But notice this one is starting to get a little bit better, okay? It does state the answer. This is the structure I'd use, and it's starting to explain why it makes sense to do it that way. Now, we haven't really gotten to any examples. It's very little analysis, but we're starting to get better. This would be a 7, example of a 7 out of 10. Let's take a look at example number 3. If I had to write a paper on the history of cheese dip, I think I would use chronological structure. This is about the history of the dip, so it makes sense to start with the earliest and work to the present day. For example, I'd try to find the first record of a restaurant that was selling cheese dip, and then find a few different places that were selling different kinds of dip all the way up to today. So notice the chronological order of things. History works in that order from start to finish, and that's how I write my paper too. Now, this is getting us close to an 8, okay? This is meeting the standards, analyze the structure and its effectiveness, okay? It's answering the question, it gives a specific text structure, it gives us examples of first to current day, and it's giving us some analysis as to why it is the best, okay? So this will be an example of an 8, and this is really where a lot of people are going to be at. Let's take a look at number 4, and this is an example of a number 10, of an answer that would score a 10 out of 10. If I had to write a paper on the long and complicated history of the bit of heaven called cheese dip, I think the best structure to use would be the chronological structure. Chronological structure allows the writer to track the history of cheese dip through the decades, going through them in order from earliest to latest. This means that the reader can work backwards from what they know today to see where it came from and what path was set. This would give the reader a long view of cheese dip and hopefully show how it had changed over the years into what they're familiar with today. History works in that order, from start to finish. So that's how I write my paper too. Now, notice this one does a lot of different things. Now, I know some of you will be like, well, of course it's a 10. Well, it's because it's longer. No, it's longer because it does more things, okay? So if you look at it, notice the first sentence, not only do we have a definitive answer, but we have a lot of good wording and a lot of liveliness, right? Long and complicated, bit of heaven, best structure, okay? Notice that wording, right? Then we get that example, okay? I track the history of the dip from the decades going through the earliest to the latest. And then I start to analyze this. Why is that important? Why is that significant? What's that going to do to make it the best? We could say, oh, wait a minute, here's what I'm familiar with. How did we get here? And so it really has a lot of analysis in it. And that's really the place where you can build up a lot of those points. Again, there is no one way to do this. There's no right way or wrong way of answering these questions as long as you address the whole thing. Answer, example, and analysis. Here's my answer, here's proof, and here's how I'm going to prove that answer, okay? And the TPACK model just helps you get there, okay? Again, if you look at the form for today, numbers 1 through 10, that will get you a practice grade. Number 11, construct a response, that will be the learning check because that is the analysis piece. You are welcome to use this video if you are in class. Obviously, any resource you have, you can use. I would assume that most of you who are watching this are at home or not with us today. This is an assignment that you need to make up. You do need to make this assignment up if you are not here, okay? So please make sure that you are not falling behind. I can't wait to see what you do with this answer. Please make sure that you are reaching out to either me or Ms. McGuire if you have any questions or problems or you need help with this. Next week, we start to shift gears into the research project.